Your star employee just gave their 2 weeks notice. That project you've been working on for 6 months is suddenly really behind schedule. Your biggest client is making noises about switching vendors, and you're thinking, how did I not see this coming? Well, you're not the only one. Most of us are terrible at preventing these situations because we wait until problems escalate into full-blown crises before taking action. The better approach is to identify potential issues early and proactively establish mitigation and contingency plans to prevent things from going sideways. The difference between managers who are constantly putting out fires and managers who seem to effortlessly navigate challenges is that they understand how to assess risk strategically and prepare for what might go wrong. By the end of this lesson, you'll know exactly how to spot and assess risks so you can head them off before they become urgent disasters that derail you, your team, and your work. But before we dive in, let me say hello. I'm Amy Canfor-Stewart, and welcome to The Modern Manager. Every week, I share strategies and tips to help you be a rockstar manager with a thriving team. Be sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. Many clients I work with, if they're addressing risks proactively, think that they need to predict the future and end up worrying about every little thing that could go wrong. They get overwhelmed by all the possibilities and end up doing nothing or focusing on the wrong things. But you do not need to be a psychic to be effective at risk assessment. You just need to be strategic. It's about identifying the risks that are most problematic so that you can focus your energy on the ones that are worth planning for. Let me walk you through a framework that will transform how you think about and prepare for workplace risks. When you're evaluating any potential risk, you need to consider 3 key factors: the likelihood, the impact, and the reversibility. So, factor 1, likelihood. How probable is it that this issue will actually happen? Is it unlikely, possible, or highly likely? You can even rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. Factor 2, impact. If this risk does happen, how severe would the consequences be? Would it be a minor inconvenience or a significant problem or a major crisis? Would it affect a small group or all of your customers and employees? And factor 3, reversibility. If this risk becomes a reality, how much time, money, and effort would it take to fix or change course? Think of this as a doorway. If you walk through, can you easily walk back out? Here's why you need all 3 factors. Something could be highly likely, but low impact and easy to fix, which means it might not be worth extensive planning. But something that's low likelihood, but high impact and hard to reverse, that could be more deserving of your attention. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works. Let's say you're managing a marketing team and you have one person, Sarah, who handles all your social media strategy and execution. She's been with the company for 3 years, she's good at her job, and she seems happy. But recently, you've noticed a few things. She's been less engaged in team meetings. She mentioned that a former colleague reached out about an opportunity, and she's been asking more questions about professional development and career advancement. So let's assess the risk of her departure using our 3-factor framework. Likelihood. Based on these early indicators, there's a reasonable chance Sarah might be considering other opportunities. Maybe it's a 40% chance she'll leave in the next, say, 6 months. Not certain, but not negligible either. Impact. If Sarah leaves, what happens? All your social media knowledge walks right out the door with her. You need to hire and train someone new, which could take months. And then during that time, your social media presence could suffer, which might affect lead generation and brand awareness. So this is a significant impact. Reversibility. How hard would it be to recover if Sarah left? Pretty difficult. It's unlikely you're going to convince her to come back. So we have a moderate likelihood, high impact, and difficult reversibility. This is definitely a risk worth planning for. Now, in this case, we noticed some early indicators. If Sarah hadn't mentioned other opportunities or hadn't seemed less engaged or hadn't been asking about career development, it probably wouldn't be a risk worth planning for at the moment. That doesn't mean the risk was 0. It just means that it probably doesn't need to be on your radar and isn't worth your time and attention. But looking for those early indicators helps you get ahead of risks. That's why it's helpful to know those early indicators. What are the signs or signals that something problematic might be happening? For the Sarah example, those early indicators might include decreased engagement in meetings or team activities, asking more questions about career development or advancement, mentoring conversations with former colleagues and industry connections, taking more personal calls or being less available, seeming less enthusiastic about long-term projects, asking about company policies around references or notice periods. The key is to identify these risk indicators before that risk becomes a reality so you can either prevent it or prepare for it. Now, once you've identified a risk worth planning for, and you know what early indicators to watch for, the next step is creating mitigation plans. For Sarah's situation, your mitigation plan might include prevention strategies that are designed to keep Sarah engaged. You could schedule a career development conversation to understand her goals and see how you can support them, or look for opportunities to give her more challenging or visible projects. You could discuss potential advancement paths within the team or the company and make sure she feels valued and recognized for her contributions. The next step is to identify preparation strategies in case Sarah does leave. In this case, you might want to have her document her key processes while she's still in the role. You could have her cross-train another team member on the basics of social media. You could build a list of potential freelancers or agencies who could provide temporary support and create a job description so that you could quickly shift into hiring mode if needed. Now, lastly, you want to have some response strategies for when Sarah does give notice. Have a plan for knowledge transfer. Know who you'll contact for temporary coverage, and have a timeline for hiring and training replacement. Notice here that you're not just hoping for the best or waiting to react. You're being proactive about both preventing the risk and preparing for it if prevention doesn't work. Instead of seeing risk assessment as a nice to have, start seeing it as an essential part of your strategic planning. You're not being pessimistic when you plan for what might go wrong. You're being responsible. You're protecting your team, your projects, and your results by thinking ahead. And here's what's really interesting. When you have plans in place for potential risks, you actually worry less about them. Instead of having vague anxiety about what might happen, you have specific strategies for handling different scenarios. Now, here's your challenge for the week. Pick one risk that's been in the back of your mind, something you've been vaguely worried about but haven't addressed systematically. This might be a key team member leaving, a project falling behind schedule, or a process improvement that you've been considering but afraid to move forward with because you think your team will resist the change. Run through the 3-factor assessment. How likely is this to happen? What would the impact be if it did happen? And how difficult would it be to reverse or fix? If it scores low, let go of the risk. Stop worrying. It's not helping you. And now you know it's not that big of a deal, and you'll be able to manage through it even if it does come to fruition. Now, if it scores high on impact and difficulty to reverse, even if the likelihood is low or moderate, it's probably worth planning for. So in this case, identify those early indicators that would signal the risk is becoming more likely. Ask yourself, what would you notice in this situation if it was developing and going down the wrong path? And then finally, create a simple mitigation plan for those 3 components: what you can do to prevent it, what you can do to prepare for it, and what you'll do if it happens. You don't need to solve everything at once. Just pick one risk and work through that process. And once you see how this framework works, you can apply it to other potential challenges. So here's what I want you to remember. Great managers aren't the ones who never face unexpected challenges. They're the ones who see challenges coming and have plans in place to handle them. When you assess risk systematically, looking at likelihood, impact, and reversibility, you can focus your energy on the risks that actually matter instead of worrying about every little thing that could go wrong. When you identify early indicators, you can spot problems while they're still manageable instead of waiting until they become crises. When you create mitigation plans, you transform vague anxiety into concrete action steps, which reduces your stress and builds your confidence. Your team needs you to be thinking ahead, anticipating challenges, and preparing for different scenarios. And the best part is that you can do this together because your team will see risks that you don't and have strategies for addressing risks that you haven't thought of. So take advantage of your full team's brainpower. If this video changed how you think about risk and planning, hit subscribe and share it with a manager who might be dealing with a challenging situation right now. For more strategic thinking resources and frameworks for effective management, visit themodernmanager.com. Until next time, remember this: the best time to prepare for a crisis is before it happens. Your future self will thank you for the planning that you do today.